You're listening to an Airwave Media Podcast.
Hello, and thanks for joining Revolution 250, where we look at events that took place 250 years ago this week. This is from the American Revolution Podcast, just a short bonus episode to remind you about important anniversaries from the Revolutionary War. This week, we remember the Olive Branch Petition. In June of 1775, Congress had authorized a Continental Army to wage war against the regulars in Boston and New York. Even so, many delegates still hoped to end the war peacefully through negotiation. On July 5th, Congress adopted yet another petition to the king, known to history as the Olive Branch Petition. This was primarily the work of Pennsylvania delegate John Dickinson, though Benjamin Franklin, John Jay, John Rutledge, and Thomas Johnson also served on the drafting committee. No one from New England served on the committee. While Dickinson had earned his Patriot street cred for his letters from a farmer in Pennsylvania years earlier, Dickinson still clung to the idea that the colonies could remain attached to the mother country if only Britain would allow the colonies to control their own internal taxes. Dickinson's views were pretty radical back in 1767 when he penned the letters. By this time, though, even though his views had pretty much remained the same, he sounded almost like a Tory. The petition itself avoided a long laundry list of Parliament's objectionable acts over the years. It stayed short and to the point. Things between Britain and the colonies had gotten crazy, and now a full-scale war had started. This was the result of all the terrible stuff ministers were doing in the king's name. The petition then humbly requested that the king use his authority to tell his ministers to respect the rights of the colonies and stop all this nonsense so everyone could get back to running an effective empire full of loyal and thriving subjects. The petition still clung to the fiction that the king was really on the side of the colonies and that the pesky parliament or corrupt members of the ministry had somehow tricked the king into letting them deprive the colonies of their sacred rights. The petition implored the king to step in and settle everything by supporting the Patriot view on taxes and individual rights. Now, it's not clear to me that anyone really believed that the king was being duped by his ministers. In truth, clinging to that fiction helped maintain their own fiction that they were not engaged in treason. It also gave British authorities a way to step in and create a negotiated settlement in such a way that would not cause the king to lose face. The decision to draft and send this petition only highlighted the divide in Congress between those who accepted that they were at war and those who still clung to a hope that there could be a negotiated compromise. The New England delegates considered the petition pretty much a waste of time. John Adams and Dickinson got into such a dispute over it that they stopped speaking to each other. Even so, Adams and just about everyone else in Congress signed the petition. It didn't commit them to anything and simply demanded that the king give them their rights. It evinced no view that the colonists would ever compromise on the issue of taxation or their right to create their own colonial legislation within their colonies. Even if many delegates considered it a waste of time, there was no use in creating bad blood with the moderates over a refusal to sign it. The petition did stress that they wanted to remain loyal to the king, and this was not about independence. In fact, the petition ended with the sentence, "that your majesty may enjoy a long and prosperous reign, and that your descendants may govern your dominions with honor to themselves and happiness to their subjects, is our sincere and fervent prayer." Along with the petition, Congress included an address to the inhabitants of Great Britain. This was drafted by Richard Henry Lee, Robert Livingston, and Edmund Pendleton. Now, the king had refused even to receive the petition from the First Continental Congress, probably anticipating that the king might treat this new petition similarly. Congress hoped the address would help build support for their cause within Britain itself. In the past, British commercial interests had effectively lobbied Parliament to abandon taxes and other colonial policies that had caused problems. Some in Congress hoped perhaps they could get local dissenters within Britain to help further the cause of the American colonies. Like the petition, the address made clear that the colonies were not seeking independence. Rather, they sought to return to the way things were between Britain and the colonies in the early 1760s. It noted that colonists were denied fundamental power to legislate for themselves or to have basic due process protection. The coercive acts and the military occupation of Boston were only making the relationship worse. Parliament's valid trade laws over the colonies profited Britain enough to justify the military and administrative costs that the British government incurred. Imposing additional taxes would only destroy what was already a profitable system for both sides. Congress clearly aimed this address at the commercial interests in England. It hoped that these interests would lobby for a compromise, and that would restore the profitable trade within the empire, much as the merchants had done to repeal the Stamp Act a decade earlier. The king, however, was in no mood for conciliation, and the merchants were not in a position to call for one either. The petitions from Congress were largely ignored as Britain geared up to suppress the rebellion. I hope you've enjoyed this Revolution 250 moment. For more of the story, please check out episode 68 of the American Revolution podcast.